each. Deputy Daly.
Thanks, Ceann Comhairle. Minister, I have to say it is with great sadness that we actually have to raise this issue again in the House. When we discussed it previously in the context of the death of Savita Halappanavar, the words were often used, never again. But of course it has happened again, and it's going to keep happening until we deal with Ireland's abortion reality. Now, the latest case, known as Miss Y, a young woman impregnated as a result of rape and violated again by the state, really has sickened Irish people to the core. And it's exposed very graphically how our lack of provision for abortion in cases of rape has meant that if you don't have the money or the means to travel, then you're forced to carry a rapist child. And quite simply, that is something that sickens Irish citizens. It's not what women want for themselves, their daughters, their mothers or their partners. And it is cruel and degrading treatment. Now, this latest horror story has again exposed the hypocrisy of how successive governments have failed to deal with Ireland's abortion reality, where Irish women have a legal right to abortion enshrined in our constitution through the right to travel, but we simply cannot have that health treatment at home. It's disgusting hypocrisy, a scenario which the UN recently described as contributing to mental torture. Now, when we raised these issues before, and myself and Deputies Wallace and Collins moved legislation, we made the point that the root of this is the 8th Amendment, which has resulted in a Chinese wall being put between the woman's right to health and a woman's right to life, rights which are indistinguishable in international human rights legislation, but for Irish women are actually qualified rights. And not only that, but we have the recent case which means that the legislation which your government brought in hasn't even been able to deal with what it was supposed to deal with, to give a right enshrined under the European Court of Human Rights for a woman to access a legal abortion where her life was in danger. Now, we've had crocodile tears about the treatment of Irish women and their children in the past, but this is actually an unbroken thread. And I want to put it to you, Minister, are you going to now finally shape up to this and repeal the 8th Amendment? Because we had a very successful event earlier this month, a Repeal the 8th Amendment conference, where delegates from across various sectors agreed with me when I raised that we would use our private members' time in January to move a repeal of the 8th Amendment if your government doesn't do so. But I hope you take up the challenge and do it first.
I thank the deputies for raising this important issue. The case of the young woman who has now become known as Miss Y is a very sad case for all of those concerned. I don't wish to comment further on it until I have all the facts available to me. I think it is wrong to jump to conclusions on any matter without knowing all of the facts, and I'm sure the deputies will agree. For the moment, what I can say is that she arrived in Ireland in late March 2014 and has successfully sought and was granted asylum in this state. In early August, she had a termination of pregnancy under Section 9 of the Protection of Life During Pregnancy Act by a planned preterm caesarean section. On the 18th of August, Tony O'Brien, the Director General of the Health Service, requested that a report be completed for him to establish all of the facts surrounding the care given to her. The purpose of this report is as follows. 1, to establish all of the factual circumstances and the sequence of events as they relate to the care provided to Miss Y during her pregnancy, her care and welfare, to include her mental health, and where relevant, the operation of the Protection of Life During Pregnancy Act 2013. 2nd, to examine and document the chain of communication among the different service providers, including referrals between services and the flow of information on Miss Y, both internally in the HSE and externally. In the event that any failings in service delivery are identified, the report is to identify the causes and the contributory factors so that they might be addressed. The time period to be covered by this report will be from the time that Miss Y first had contact with the HSE and related services or other agencies and NGOs regarding her pregnancy, until the time that her pregnancy was ended by caesarean section. When the report is submitted to me, I'll consider the HSE report and any appropriate action that may be taken at that point. I'm very keen to have the report sooner rather than later, but anyone who is referred to in this report has the right to see it first and comment on it before it is published, and that's what natural justice dictates. This will determine the final date of publication. In the meantime, I want to clarify that the Protection of Life During Pregnancy Act was used in this case, and a termination of pregnancy was performed by means of an early delivery by caesarean section owing to the gestation of the child involved. The Protection of Life During Pregnancy Act 2013 was enacted in July 2013 and commenced in July 2014. The Act provides for a lawful termination where there is a real and substantial risk to the life as distinct from the health of the pregnant woman, which may only be averted by the termination of the pregnancy. It does not allow for termination on any other grounds. The Act also creates procedures which apply to the lawful termination of pregnancy. The objectives of these procedures are to ensure that where the lawful termination of pregnancy is under consideration, the right to life of the unborn is protected where practical, as required by our Constitution, and to ensure that a woman can ascertain by means of a clear process whether she requires this procedure or not. At present, there are no proposals to amend the Protection of Life During Pregnancy Act in the lifetime of this government, but the Act will be reviewed as required next June. And there are no proposals to hold a referendum to repeal the 8th Amendment.
Deputy Clare Daly. 1 minute.
Well, we weren't discussing the individual case, but what we do know really is that the words of warning expressed by the UN Human Rights Committee really rang true in that case, where this woman was really treated and shown to be no more than a vessel in the eyes of the state. And your legislation has deemed to be absolutely inadequate in dealing with the very graphic circumstances similar to the X case. A woman whose life is in danger, who needs an abortion, wasn't able to get one under the legislation. It's as simple as that. And I do think the criteria laid down and the warnings by the UN in terms of how you've structured the legislation means an excessive scrutiny by the medical profession of women, and really it is a chilling effect is still there. Minister, wise up. You're a young man. Ireland's abortion reality and rates are pretty much the same as they are in every other country. It's an instance and a health matter which has affected every Irish family, whether they know it or not. The only thing that's different is we're not allowed to have that medical treatment at home, surrounded by our family and friends. So what it means really is that women and couples who have money in a crisis pregnancy situation can access abortion for all of the many and different reasons, none of them easy, all of them valid. Women and couples who can't either have babies or take risks, and that is simply not acceptable in a modern society. And I think it is time, and some of your own backbenchers have even realised that we need to face up to this disgusting hypocrisy and legislate for abortion at home.
Come on, Deputy Wallace also has 1 minute.
Minister,